So what happens in 1918 November, ceasefire is declared, and in 1919, the victors all gather to divide the cake. The victors all come together and party for almost a year. And by party, I mean engage in meetings and dialogues. And they chose Paris, France. And this is called the Paris Peace Conference of 1919. When the world leaders of America, England, Italy, and France all came together. If we can see the next slide as well. Here we have the presidents of, here you see on your slide, the president, that is the president of, firstly, that is England, and then Italy, and then France, and then that's Woodrow Wilson right at the very end. On the right, Woodrow Wilson, right? This is the infamous picture, Paris 1990, the presidents of England, Italy, France, I should say Paris, excuse me, in Paris, sorry. France and America. These are all of the four presidents, and obviously hundreds and thousands of entourage, ministers of every single country. For 1919, Paris became the capital of the world. Delegations are coming from all over the world, even from the small islands of whatever, coming for independence, clamoring for this and that, petitioning the African movements as well. Here in America, the African Americans trying to petition for independence from the whites. I mean, all over, people are coming to basically, petition against other causes and whatnot. And obviously, this Paris Peace Conference of 1919 was when the victors agreed on how to divide all of the spoils in front of them. And of the most important effects, although not directly relevant to us, was the financial constraints and burdens and taxes they put on Germany. And they said that the Germans are completely guilty. You must acknowledge that every one of you is guilty for causing World War I or for causing the Great War, and you have to pay back every single country all of the damages that has happened. So Germany is placed with trillions of dollars of basically taxes and debt. It's impossible to pay off, right? And the Germans knew this. And Germany has this now complex of how they're going to do this. And obviously in this complex, in this underdog type of mentality, Adolf Hitler comes along in the late 1920s and 30s, and he gives that German pride that they were waiting for. And that was that pride that basically caused Hitler to come to power, which of course precipitated World War II, which of course precipitated the collapse of Europe as a world power, which of course shot America up into the superpower status that it still continues to enjoy to this day. It was also in this conference that both the Arabs and the Zionists came and argued their case in front of the Allied politicians. And Woodrow Wilson, now at this point in time, America is neutral. I know that sounds bizarre for us, but once upon a time, America was not biased towards Israel. Well, there was no Israel right now, but America was not biased towards the Zionists. And America actually tried to be neutral, believe it or not. What did Woodrow Wilson do? 1919. He said, let us send our own independent study into the land, and let us see if it's feasible to give the Zionists a land for themselves. And this is called the King Crane Commission. King-Crane, C-R-A-N-E, the King Crane Commission, because there was two people, and they were both Arabists. They spoke fluent Arabic. They were scholars, academics, if you like. And they went right after this peace conference, 1919, directly at the command of President Woodrow Wilson, and they toured Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Damascus. They went all over the Arab world, and they literally met with Bedouins and tribal leaders, and they were on the ground. Unlike Sykes-Picot in the air-conditioned room with the map in front of them, they're on the ground. And they spend the bulk of 1919 literally wandering and walking and surveying and whatnot. And they come back with a very strongly worded resolution. Or not resolution, but I mean suggestion or whatever. I mean their findings, if you like. Where they say that any establishment of a Jewish homeland in those areas is impossible without severely trampling the rights of the locals. It's just not possible. You can't do it. And they suggested very strongly that the whole idea should be scrapped. This is the official response of the King Crane Commission. And as you can find this, the original documents, we still have them in the Library of Congress. You can Google them. I didn't put them on the slide, but you can find them. The original findings are still there, and they are against establishing a Zionist homeland. Well, what do you think happened? That is basically filed away. Nobody cares about that. And Woodrow Wilson eventually, other members of his parliament and whatever Congress convince him otherwise, and the King-Crane Commission simply becomes a footnote in American history. It was never acted upon. However, the New York Times did talk about the King-Crane Commission. There's a whole article in 1990, New York Times, about the results of the King-Crane Commission. It's amazing now how the New York Times even has changed from its position in 1919 to its position right now. Now, most importantly for us, eventually the gist of the Sykes-Picot Agreement was ratified and agreed to in the Paris Peace Conference. And this is called the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles. Now, what is the Treaty of Versailles? It is one of the treaties of the Paris Peace Conference. The Paris Peace Conference is the whole year. Many, many treaties. And the Treaty of Versailles is the most important treaty for us because it deals with the Ottomans. There were other treaties about Europe and whatnot. That's not our business too much in this classroom or in this lecture. We are more interested in the Treaty of Versailles. And by and large, sorry, we have a picture here. If you can show this here. This is Faisal, the son of Sharif Hussein. And this was the best friend of T.E. Lawrence. This is T.E. Lawrence in the background. You see him in the background? So for some reason, my cursor is not working. You see him on the left of Faisal. You see him on the left behind him? He's the only white guy wearing the ghutra, wearing the shimagh. He's the only white guy wearing the Arab headgear. Kind of smirking. That's T.E. Lawrence right there. Okay? So you have in the forefront Faisal, the son of the Sharif of Hussein. Right? So Sharif Hussein had 3 sons. We're going to talk about this. Faisal was the closest friend to T.E. Lawrence. He was also the youngest son. And this is in Paris. They're standing in Paris. That's one of his slaves in the background, by the way. He brought his slave entourage. One of his slaves in the background, his bodyguards, is standing in the back. And towards his right is his one of his viziers or one of his admirals. And then you have 2 British people and a Parisian. And there's T.E. Lawrence over there as well. So he is arguing for Arab independence. He's arguing for give my father the caliphate. That's what you promised me. That's why he's there. Chaim Weizmann also is there, and the Zionist Federation, and they're saying the Balfour Declaration you promised us, right? So this is where the you-know-what hits the you-know-what, right? This is where both parties are saying, you promised us, what are you going to do? And so what happened was, they kind of sort of basically acquiesced and agreed to the Sykes-Picot Agreement,